Happy opening day of Penn State football camp, Nittany Lions fans. This is Blue White Illustrated Live. That's Thomas Frank Carr. I'm Greg Pickle coming to you on July 30th. The Nittany Lions are set to return to the practice field tonight to kick off their run to the season opener with Nevada. Head coach James Franklin is entering his 12th season at Penn State, his 12th preseason camp. I don't know where the last 12 years have gone, T. Frank. I'm Greg Pickle from Blue White Illustrated. That's Thomas Frank Carr. T. Frank, happy opening camp day, buddy.
It's finally here. I'm excited. I know that we don't get a chance to see anything until this weekend, but there's things to talk about. There's new news. There's new insight. And I think even for the coaches, right? We're going to get into this later today, talking about some of the position battles, but certainly on defense, I think there's still things that it's not like we're withholding information or there's more stuff that the coaching staff is holding back in terms of what we've talked about this summer. Genuinely, I think there's a lot of unknowns, which for a team that is as good as this one potentially could be, I think that's an exciting camp to be in, where there's a lot of positive mystery for the program. And we'll find out. We'll find out how all that goes. But, of course, one of the number one things, I think, for a Penn State fan, Steven says here, no injuries, please. Yeah, right. That's something I've been monitoring Bills camp, and that's been horrible so far for the Bills. That injuries are a part of camp. I don't know if the Eagles, where they are in that situation. I got to text some of my buddies, but that's the number one thing I think that people.
I'm just not going to respond to that. I'm just going to let that one go, and you can figure out what that means and probably assume what that means from there.
Yeah, and there's just that. It's the thing that I think most people don't consider when we talk about national championships, Super Bowls, things like that. Is injury luck is a massive part of football. It's just a massive part of football.
It is. And so Penn State and everybody else across college football will be hoping to get through camp unscathed, healthy, and ready to roll. I'm sure there's always bumps and bruises that come out of camp. That's just the way it is in any level of football in 2025. But T. Frank, you wrote yesterday about your most underrated storylines going into Penn State camp. So we all know the obvious ones, and it's receiver, it's the backup quarterback battle, it's defensive line, it's, go on and on and on and on. We've done it for months. So go back through the channel here.
Yeah.
You can find all of the most talked about storylines. Underrated one, though, in your mind. Hit me with it.
So this actually doesn't have to do with position battles. I think this is something about the schedule, and I'm not a schedule expert. Maybe this is just because I don't pay attention. But I don't think Penn State could have gotten a more favorable schedule in 2025. Not only do they have, respectfully, a bye for the first month of the season, extra training camp with all those non-conference games that they schedule for themselves, but they literally have a bye week before Oregon and before Ohio State. Yeah. That is, I don't know if Pat Kraft, went in and got blackmail on whoever makes the Big Ten schedule, but after years of having really unfavorable schedule, starting on the road, having that meat grinder 4-game stretch of 2 away games against Michigan and Minnesota before playing Ohio State or something like that. They have as good of a schedule they could line up in their biggest, most critical moments. Even before the Ohio State game, they have at Iowa, bye to recover from a physical game, and then at Ohio State. I just think that kind of the way it lays out, there's so much advantage for Penn State in that situation.
And it's good for Penn State to go into a season when it has, as you mentioned earlier, some of those positive curiosities or question marks, is that you do have time to figure them out. You don't need to have them all sorted out by August 30th. Now, look, you need most of them figured out. Nevada is not going to come to Beaver Stadium in rollover. However, they're not, in my mind, from what I've seen, a team like App State, who gave Penn State a big scare a few years ago in the non-conference opener at Beaver Stadium. So you have to have most of the things ironed out. But to your point, you will have time to fine-tune before Oregon in the whiteout. But yeah, you talk about the schedule, the whiteout back in prime time for the best opponent on the home schedule, something that was a sore subject for Pat Kraft, James Franklin, and Penn State fans the last few years. The Big Ten opener is not on the road, as you mentioned, not an issue this year. Now, Penn State will go on the road the following week to UCLA after the Oregon game. But yeah, it lays out about as well, I think, as you could have hoped for. And for Penn State, they will have to take advantage of those bye weeks. Now, Ohio State does have a bye before playing Penn State, so they will be on equal footing there. But yeah, all told, I'm not sure if you're a Penn State fan what more you could ask for in terms of a schedule matching the expectations for the team, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Do you think that there's a scheduling decision by the Big Ten to put their best teams in a situation to win those games where you want to make sure you get as many teams to the playoff as possible? There's a financial incentive for that. Is this the because James Franklin talked about it before, of going to 9 games. He talked about it last week. Going to 9 games was probably the worst decision for them in terms of for the conference overall, for getting teams to the playoff, having the best profile for your best teams. And he insinuated like since they went to divisions, it's been better for the conference. Is this? Right. Do you think this is a part of it, or is this just like, am I now floating into conspiracy land, like heading off on the wrong direction?
You are. Yes, you're floating away rapidly. No, it's all good. I enjoy that. But yeah, I think that Penn State fans, not all, some felt conspired against with some of this stuff over the years. And so I really don't have any interest in going down that road and thinking Penn State was being conspired against then. So I don't think they're being helped by a conspiracy now. I just think that sometimes the chips fall in your favor. Sometimes they don't. I realize that road opening streak for Penn State was absurd. I'm not arguing that whatsoever. And it's stunning that the Big Ten did not figure that out sooner. But I just think that, and you're right, that is part of the conversation, though. Not that it should be, but it is. And maybe not so much in the Penn State fan base, but around the Big Ten. I'm sure there's some fans that feel like their team is put in a disadvantageous situation because they aren't a power brand. Maybe they're not as important to Fox, or whatever it may be, or one of the television partners, so on and so forth. So, yeah, with the money involved and the way this works, not just from a TV perspective, but from a revenue college football playoff postseason perspective, yeah, these are the kind of conversations you run into for sure.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how it works out, because we can also have the snarky comments about James Franklin's record after a bye and all those things. Sure, that's on the table. Worst case scenario, it doesn't get any better because they've got 2 of the best teams in America after a bye. But it also can't hurt. Like, I definitely don't think it can hurt when you've got all of the opportunity there to. And this is the thing that I think, I don't know if fans are aware of, the crunch that happens from what you would normally do to scout an opponent to what you have to do in a regular season to scout an opponent, where there's not enough time to go through everything. So you've got to make some decisions about what you're going to focus on. Having an extra week to game plan and having an extra week to watch the film and get players the information they need. I understand that there's other priorities that go into a bye week, including recruiting, but it's a massive advantage to have extra time. That's just time is everything during a football season.
Yeah, and it's a massive advantage to have extra staff, too. And one thing, if you go back, and it's not as easy to find as it probably should be, but if you go back through Penn State media guides when James Franklin got here 12 years ago and now, the support staff has grown exponentially. Now, that's happened across college football, but certainly Penn State has been among that trend. And this is part of the reason why, T. Frank, you have people who can just focus on recruiting. You have people who can focus on just looking at guys who may go into the transfer portal. You have guys who can, and girls and whoever, who can focus on looking at your next opponent and your opponent after that and your second half of the schedule and so on and so forth. There's a lot more hands on deck at Penn State than there's been in the past. I think they may have 1 or 2 more in terms of that analyst support staff, T. Frank, than they had last season this year. And I'm sure they would probably take 1 or 2 more if they could get them. But ultimately, you're right. Time is of the essence in a college football season to get where you want to go. And for Penn State, they have made sure that they have put themselves in a position to maximize that time as best they can, both during the season and during the bye week.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so rest of today's show, we're going to get into some position battles, the final ones we have to look at during the final hours of the offseason, because the preseason starts later today when Penn State takes the field. Then you're going to hear T. Frank's exclusive conversation with former Penn State offensive lineman, current media personality Landon Tangwall. Looking forward to hearing that. But first, we're talking about schedules. We're talking about home games. T. Frank, you know a guy that can help with those kind of things if Penn State fans are looking to go.
Yeah, I always like to get things squared away early and take care of that stuff so that I don't have to think about it the week of, the day of, whatever it is.
So
And
you're
if
not a guy that likes to wait and see if the price is going to drop. You just want to dive in. I'm with you for more often than not. I'm with you. I don't need to wait and see if it's going to drop $20. Let me just get it squared away with somebody I trust. And again, you got a guy like that too.
Yeah, anxiety is not worth $20. If am I actually going to go, or am I going to get tickets together with somebody that I want to go to see? All that stuff, no thank you. And if you've been looking for a reliable source of Penn State football tickets, Jim at TixmanJim.com, formerly PSU Tixman.com, has been running his ticket exchange in Wilmington, Delaware for over 25 years. Here's the deal. The internet is becoming increasingly like a landmine. Click on a website. Is it spam? Is it AI? I don't know anymore. Like, it's weird. It's horrible. You want to go to somewhere you know this is a protected website. This is a secure website. This is somebody who's not trying to sell you something on eBay that he found. Like, these are legitimate tickets. He's been in Delaware for over 25 years. Every buyer is handled with courtesy, respect, and every ticket purchased is guaranteed. And of course, it's also got a good charity behind it. Proceeds are used to fund the PSU AA Chapter Scholarship Fund and the PSU Levi Lamb Fund for athletic scholarships. Get your 2025 season tickets right now. Get your Nevada tickets, get your Villanova tickets, get your whiteout tickets. We know when that game is going to be. There's no mystery. You don't have to wait until the week of to find out when the game is, to know when you need to show up, if you can even go. Get your tickets right now. TixmanJim.com. That's www.tixmanjim.com, or email Jim at tixmanjim@gmail.com.
Have you heard of Way Fruit Farm? It's this great farm market bakery and cafe. You can shop with them either at their farm in Port Matilda or downtown State College.
No way.
Yes, Way Fruit Farm. They have all sorts of seasonal fruits and veggies.
Way cool.
No, Way Fruit Farm. But anyway, you should visit their bakery and cafe. They serve amazing food all day.
Way.
Fruit Farm!
Penn State back on the field this afternoon for the first time since spring practice ended with the blue-white game on April 26th, I believe it was. That was over at Beaver Stadium. Penn State will be at the Haluba Hall and Lash Building practice fields this afternoon. We've been going over on various shows here on the BWI YouTube channel a lot of position battle previews and position previews just in general. Obviously, some spots have more battles going on than others. Are the two that we're talking about today, I think, are of most interest to a lot of fans just because of, number one, there's some questions, and number two, they're key to this defense. And T. Frank, I guess let's start the bidding at linebacker. So Dan Connor, of course, oversees this group for Penn State. Penn State legend, of course, who has been an analyst on the staff for a couple years. And then when analysts were allowed to start on-field coaching duties, he moved into the full-time linebacker coach role. Jim Knowles has a background with linebackers and players of all positions on defense, obviously, but overseeing things more than coaching a position, which, of course, has become more of the norm the last few years in college football. So with all those details out of the way, give me your 50,000-foot view first, easy for me to say, of the linebacker group going into summer camp. Keep in mind they lost Tamir Robinson during spring practice. They got Amari Campbell from the transfer portal in the spring window, and that was a need, James Franklin said, to make sure they had the numbers that they needed to start the season.
There's been a lot of mixed signals from the linebacker room in spring football, and I think over the summer, because Tony Rojas wasn't there, recovering from off-season surgery. And I think, I wrote about this yesterday. I've been talking about this throughout the offseason. Part of it is I probably have an ignorance to this. There's probably more of an internal plan than I know about. But I also think because you didn't have Rojas out there, you didn't have your starting duo. And so there is a lack of, how do these pieces fit together in Jim Knowles' defense? I think there's significant opportunity for players moving to either position, whether it's Mike or Will, this season during camp. There's going to be a lot of fluidity here. There has been already in spring football. So for me, this has been the hardest position to get a read on this year. But the basic outline I think that we've landed on is that you're going to see Dom DeLuca play Mike, and you're going to have Tony Rojas stay at his will linebacker position. And from there, it's going to be about competition for snaps at that Mike linebacker position. Can anybody share the position with DeLuca? More so, I think, than can someone take it from him? And then does anyone else present themselves as a viable candidate to see snaps at that will linebacker position as well? Because there's not going to be as much of the, well, now we can move Dom out to the Sam linebacker position and move somebody in or any of that stuff, because it's going to be two linebackers. This defense, as much as I've said there's not a whole lot of difference between Tom Allen or Manny Diaz in this defense. Well, Tom Allen, I should say. There's Manny Diaz played out of a base 4-3 defense. This defense specifically does not put a third linebacker on the field unless they go up against specific teams. So it's going to be who's playing the Mike and who's playing the Will. Skill set overlaps, but job responsibility is different at these two positions. And I think that's the most interesting thing to me is who's going to be calling the defense, who gets a green dot, and how does that translation work for the rest of the team.
So, Steven, thank you, buddy. You're always here with us on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. He said, how's the UNC kid doing? Intel, insight lacking until August practices. The UNC kid, of course, is transfer Amari Campbell. I bring this up not to talk about Amari Campbell, but camp in general.
Yep.
So, these events, like the college camp at Penn State, is not like NFL camps in terms of access. We are not there every day. If you follow your favorite teams, reporters on social media, they are there for some part of every day of training camp. Penn State camp is not that way. We get to see a fair amount. We're appreciative of that more than a lot of schools across the country. But point being is that, number one, just sharing with you how the coverage works in terms of what we actually go to see. Obviously, we can find things out other ways. But number two, you're not going to have a full update on any position group after day one of practice. There's a portion where they have to have no padded practices. Of course, everyone does that off the jump. But I know tomorrow there's going to be a thread over on the Blue White Illustrated message board. You'll be able to view it inside the Lions Den if you sign up for $1 for 1 week of access to get intel and insight during the entire first week of Penn State training camp. We hope that'll give you reason to stick with us for the rest of this highly anticipated 2025 season. But I know a thread's going to pop up tomorrow morning and or a post in one of the already active threads that's going to ask for insight on day one and how the receivers look, or the question like Stevens, what did Amari Campbell look like? It's like, guys, gals, it's going to take some patience to get the updates everyone's looking for, because as you mentioned a moment ago, T. Frank, the coaching staff is still trying to figure this out. You wrote, as you mentioned, over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com about the underrated storylines, and I'm glad you did point this one out because it goes to this conversation. I just want to read Jim Knowles' quote that you used here, and it was talking about some guys who've been out on defense. He said, I need to see more. I mean, high expectation. Those two guys you mentioned, who Zion Tracy and Tony Rojas, were the impetus of the question. But then he goes on to say, denied Dennis Sutton wasn't out there during spring ball. Zane Durant, Alonzo Ford. We had some different guys who weren't fully available. So you have expectations. You watched the film from last year and previous years, but you still got to see them do it. Camp will be big. Well, maybe no position group than the two we're talking about today is camp bigger for than linebackers and nickel, which we're going to get to in just a little bit. But, I think the biggest thing that we need to learn, T. Frank, is we've talked all off season, and you mentioned it, about two linebackers, 4-2-5 base, so on and so forth. But with the numbers Penn State has and with the players Penn State has, I think Jim Knowles still has to the quote I just read, figure out exactly what this is going to look like. Like, I'm more excited than anyone to see what Keon Wiley can do this camp and what role he may be able to carve out for himself in this defense. But what exactly does it look like? Just don't know how anyone could say firmly or concretely at this moment, what exactly it could look like for him at this point. So, and he's not the only one in that category. So there's a lot for Dan Connor and Jim Knowles to figure out here. There's plenty of time to do it. I think people sometimes get stressed and think that 25 practices over 29 days is not enough time. I am here to assure you that it is. I mean, would they take more? Yeah, of course. Would they have loved to have these guys in the spring too? Yes, without question. I wrote this morning that Tony Rojas is in the spotlight this month, T. Frank, because He wasn't a part of those spring practices. And would Jim Knowles had loved to have had a guy that they hope can be one of their best game records on defense available? Well, yeah, of course. I'm sure Tony Rojas would have loved those reps too. But there is enough time to get these guys ready to roll, especially for a guy like Rojas. Played a lot of games, played a lot of football, was around the team this spring, observing, was able to do stuff this summer. So, yeah, the linebacker battle is interesting because with what they added and then what was not available in the spring, there's just more questions than answers at this point. And that's not the case with a lot of positions, but it is with this one.
And it's also that they were experimenting a lot with the linebacker lineup during spring football. So we came in expecting to see Dom DeLuca at Mike, and then he didn't play Mike at all during spring football. Like during the blue-white game, he played Will. He wasn't on the field for a whole lot, but he did play a little bit, and he played where he played last year. And that got you thinking of, okay, so if DeLuca's there, like, were they planning on playing Tony Rojas the Mike, or were they just clearing DeLuca out of the way to see a guy like Anthony Specca and to see some of the other young guys at Mike linebacker? Would have been Tammy Robinson, but then he went into the transfer portal, right? So you've got an interesting. This is what I'm saying. Of like, I think even the coaching staff was experimenting with players and positions to see what would stick during spring football. And since then, they probably have a good understanding of, okay, here's what happened during spring football. So we're probably not going to do this. We're going to lean more into that. We think this guy did well. And now we're going to come into August, today, July 30th, and then into August. And we're going to then see how all of that shakes out on the other side, and if we need to continue to tweak and adjust now that we have a full complement of players, adding in Amari Campbell, adding in Tony Rojas, make some decisions from there. Because, I think what we think is going to happen is probably the most likely outcome, but when you put all the things together, I think that does change. The one thing I'd say is if you've got guys that have been calling the defense, they have to practice that. So they've been probably practicing that with the helmet, with the mic in the helmet, this summer, and that is something I don't think you can just throw on somebody and have them do it at the last minute. Maybe, like certain guys, if you're really smart, and they're known for having a high football IQ, probably could handle it. But there is just that process of, we saw last year, communication was an issue for the first month of the season. They have that time to get that worked out, but I don't think they want a repeat of what happened last year with issues of defensive communication. So settling that, I think that might help here. Or settling that, it might be part of what they do during spring football or what they've decided to do coming into spring football. But again, maybe it's just the perception from sitting on the outside of the opaque glass. This one is hard to read. I think we have a great understanding of pretty much every other position based on what the team has done, some of the moves they made. But I'm keeping my mind open at linebacker because I tried to give some concrete decisions after the spring, and I don't think I was right. And yeah, that's just, to me, this battle comes down to who's going to split reps at number 3 and number 4. And I think for fans that want to see somebody else play Mike linebacker, I don't foresee that happening. I think the main players that might see time, as we've seen before with like an Ellis Brooks and a Kobe King back in the day, or a Tyler Elsdon and a Kobe King, you're looking at Anthony Specca at Mike linebacker, and then Amari Campbell, if he fits into that role for the Nittany Lions. Because I do think the Keon Wiley hype has been building this offseason. So I think maybe instead of where we were at the beginning of the spring, of who's going to play where, how's this all work out, I do think that there is more of a concrete top 5 that you should feel good about. Now, in the chat, everyone's wondering about LeVar Arrington. I don't see him.
I'm stunned that that's the case.
Shocking, right?
Absolutely stunned, yes.
So let me just say it right now. Barring injury or something unexpected, you're going to see LeVar Arrington II on the field. He's going to play 4 games because everyone can play 4 games. I firmly do not expect him to be a player contributing in a role or a massive way in 2025. There's a lot of growth for him to do physically and mentally. Very raw football player. And this is not a defense that loves the hybrid edge defender, at least as what we've seen in the past at other places from that will position specifically. The linebackers are linebackers for the most part. They blitz from off the ball. We'll see if they retain any of the things that Penn State's had since Manny Diaz, but I don't get the sense Jim Knowles is going to be that way. So it's going to be his defense and what pieces adapt. I don't think that there's going to be that hybrid role for LeVar Arrington to just walk in and use pass rushing skills as a shortcut to get on the field. I could be wrong, but that's where I'm sitting right now. I firmly don't think he's going to be, I do not think he's going to be one of the 4 major linebackers for 2025.
Yeah, Penn State fans will continue to ask about it, though. Last year, Tyzer Denmark was a player that we talked about almost weekly because his name came up in the chat on one of the shows, and I believe LeVar Arrington will be that guy this year. Darius Dixon, another candidate for that conversation, which is a good segue, potentially, or maybe not, to our other position group. Final one of the offseason and the final hours of the offseason before preseason camp begins. It's the nickel spot, and Penn State, of course, will not exclusively use defensive back in its 4-2-5 look when it comes time to put that 5th player on the field. But, I mean, I think we can all agree that more often than not, that's going to be the case. So Penn State is in need of a player who can be versatile and can fill the box against the run and play against top receivers in the pass game. That's always easier said than done. Penn State thought it had the perfect setup a year ago with KJ Winston, Jalen Reed, and Zacchaeus Wheatley. That lasted all of 5.5 quarters. So what do you think the outlook is this year, T. Frank, for this position in Jim Knowles' defense?
I always try to reverse engineer from the goal of the position. What are you asking that position to do? And then work back from which players have the skills to make that happen. So the hardest thing for a defensive back to do is to play man coverage. It is the hardest thing from a physical traits perspective to play sticky man coverage against a slot receiver with a two-way go. You have to have short area quickness. You have to have the IQ to play the position. You have to have the feel for it, meaning you've done it before. And so that typically leads this nickel position to favor corners, specifically bigger corners that can do those things you talked about of filling the run, but also they have to be corners that can have a sense of how to play in a deep third or a deep coverage from the slot. This defense is all about disguising coverages and using odd alignments to generate uncertainty for the quarterback. So this nickel defender has to be able to play in a deep zone coverage. They have to play man coverage. They have to play zone. They have to play underneath coverage and in the box. But the hardest thing and the most important, I would say, is probably man coverage. So if you're targeting like what would be the best place to start, it's probably Zion Tracy, who had the job last year. His struggles were tackling and in zone coverages. They did not use him once KJ Winston went down and he became the part-time nickel corner with Cam Miller. They didn't use their nickel corners in deep coverage. It became a conventional defense. So he's got to learn that aspect. On the flip side, I think the best outcome, if he's able to win the job, is King Mack, because he's got the speed to play in man coverage. He's got the physical abilities. He's not done it as much. He didn't do it at Penn State when he was a strong safety, when he was here first. He was not part of the nickel conversation. Then he transferred to Alabama, played a kind of a similar style of this nickel, and it didn't go great. He didn't win the starting job, and he didn't look comfortable when he was out there. So fast forward to now, has he integrated himself into this defense, and can he do all of the coverage responsibilities to a level similar to Zion Tracy? So ultimately, what I think you're going to get is you're going to get guys splitting this position. You're going to have certain matchups and situations, teams, where you might have King Mack down in the box playing that nickel as a zone, primarily zone defender, and as a run defender against run-heavy teams. And then you'll see Zion Tracy out there for third downs. You'll see him out there against pass-heavy teams that go to a true spread situation, and you're going to get more players involved. That's been Penn State's MO anyway with that nickel defense, whether it's a linebacker and a corner or, a corner and a safety in the past, or all three. So I think you're going to have some split of that, but if we're going to say which one's the starter, I'm going to lean towards Zion Tracy at this point until we have seen that King Mack can do the hardest thing for a safety to do. And I think that's the interesting thing is if you have a guy that can do all of those things and be the player for every situation, that gives you a massive advantage. I just don't know that they have one of those guys on the roster right now as we stand here at the start of camp.
Yeah, so I'm going to take this conversation maybe in a little bit more of a global look at the back seven of the defense, not just nickel. But I think one of the position battles I'm most interested in is King Mack against Lane for this top safety job beside Wheatley, because the other guy is going to play plenty. Of course, I feel pretty confident in that, but he's going to have to carve out a role for himself in this defense in some way, shape, or form, whether it's at nickel, whether it's his the backup safety, whatever it may be. And I'm just really interested to see how that all shakes out during the next month. But when it comes to that nickel spot, you're right. It's an important part in Jim Knowles' defense. Penn State, I'm sure, should feel good about where it enters camp, considering how strong and how deep the secondary is. And now, like you mentioned, T. Frank, it's going to be about picking the right guy that can best blend all the things you have to do at this position.
Yeah, and so the other guys at the position that we saw this spring, Colin Dinkins and then Kenny Wosley. And Dinkins, athletically, bigger, stronger, and faster than pretty much anybody at that position, and did some good things in the spring game. Also, Kenny Wosley tackles really well. Freshman that I think is going to play this year, but I don't know that he's going to be, with as many options they have of veteran players and guys they brought in with King Mack, I don't think he's going to be able to crack that because of the experience, but he's going to put pressure on those guys. I was very impressed with what he did. Again, especially as a run defender. If you're looking at an undersized corner, that's the first thing I'm going to look at is, okay, how does he play against the run? Did that pretty well. Did that, I think, really well in the blue-white game, even though half of it was thud, right? You weren't going to full tackle. But even then, when they were, I thought he was strong in that area. And then you mentioned Darius Dixon. There's a lot of guys on the roster long-term for this position that I think are great. You got him, Josh Johnson, a bunch of slot corner / safety hybrids that really work well for this style of defense, that you can see them in a bunch of different ways. I thought Antoine Belgrave-Shorter would have an opportunity to play in this particular position as somebody who played a lot of man coverage in high school, and maybe he could throw his hat in the ring at some point, but as of now, I think he's in one of those true safety positions. The other thing that may happen in this situation is, okay, somebody gets banged up, you need a couple of plays at safety from somebody other than the two starters that we're thinking of in Dejon Lane and Zachy Wheatley. Who are you going to pull? Probably King Mack. And that will then shift the depth chart behind those two and kind of have this thing feel out. Because as the questions in the chat, Penn State has three corners that I think are going to rotate some starting time. You've got A.J. Harris, a guy that they think is going to be an All-American player, and then Elliot Washington and Davian Collins are going to compete for reps each play, each game. I think that kind of like we saw with Kalen King and Johnny Dixon back in the day, they could be competing even for who's the starter week to week. That might be a future there. So you feel like you have good resiliency there, so you would be borrowing from other positions to fill that need beyond. You can take a little bit from the cornerback depth if you need to, probably not taking any more from the safety depth for this nickel position. So just kind of contingencies, the starting point. I guess that's how I see the nickel defender. But the last thing for me, Greg, is I think this is a really important position battle as well, because depending on who's playing that position can alter the personality of the defense. Just to be kind of basic about this, safeties hit harder. If it's King Mack, that dude's an enforcer. He loves to thump. He loves to hit people. Zion Tracy hasn't shown that. Now, he could show that this year, but that may be more of a coverage lean. You may have to have other players be more active and aggressive in the box. It may change how you use certain players and what packages you play. So that's kind of like, it'll determine the personality of this defense based on how this position battle plays out, even though I don't think this is the most important safety position in the defense. And as much as we're talking about nickels and corners and all those things, I view this as a safety position because it has to play in that deep coverage and it has to play the box the same way. And it asks more of what a safety would do than a corner, even though it absolutely has to play like a corner at times.
All right, T. Frank, we got to get to your interview with Landon Tangwall, your conversation with Landon Tangwall, but we only have roughly 6 hours left of the offseason. You have one last shot to get your final thoughts, predictions, picks, hottest take, coldest take, lukewarmest take. You got the floor, buddy. Run with it.
Yeah. So I've said this a couple of times. It's going to be coming up in the conversation at some point over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. I think if you've got the preview magazine, This is Penn State's year, so I'm going all in on Penn State is going to do it because that's my prediction as far as the expectation for this team. So all the things we've discussed, I at least at this point in August, before we've seen any of the results of camp, good or bad, they've got the pieces. The reality is in front of them that they can run the table this year. So I guess that's my expectation as far as a hot take or my most important thing. The other thing is, if you checked it out, you should absolutely check out Landon's channel because we didn't plan on doing this. This is not intentional. But a few weeks ago, he asked me if I would come on his show, and we did a ride around in a car from Bobby Rahal Honda, and he just wanted to get to know me a little bit better on camera, like for everybody else. For those, we talk and text all the time off camera, but he wanted to do that and give people I feel weird, Greg. Like, this feels very self-promotional, but you should go support Landon's YouTube video where we do a ride around, and he just asked me about my career. Well, we're returning the favor here on this show because a few weeks later, I had him over, and we just sat on my back porch and talked about the season. We're going to have a full 70-minute conversation, unedited, over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, where we're giving you kind of the less formal of this, where we just sit and talk. But we're going to have part of that here to end the show, and then we may have some more tomorrow, although that's still TBD. But the main place to go and get all these things from a story about Nate Bruce that Landon has never told before over there. And then, kind of our views on things outside of football, within football about our jobs, but outside of just the team in 2025. So it was a lot of fun. We had a great time with it. Hope you enjoyed here on the show and then over on the site.
One thing I want to get to, T. Frank, before we get to the recorded portion of our show, it came up in the chat earlier. I want to express our thoughts and condolences to the family of BWI publisher Sean Fitz. Sean has been back and forth between State College and Greencastle a good bit over the last couple of months. His mom, Nancy, at the age of 70, peacefully moved on from this life at her home on July 29th after a brief but courageous battle with cancer. So, Sean, if you're listening, any family listening, our thoughts and prayers are with you, buddy. I feel pretty confident speaking for you, T. Frank, and the rest of the Penn State fan base that everyone is pulling and thinking of you and your family at this difficult time. So I just wanted to express that. And T. Frank, I think it's time for you to share with our audience an interview and sit down with Landon Tangwall and you that was filmed on is this your back porch?
Yeah, this is on the back porch. Yeah.
All right, everyone. Enjoy. We will catch up with you next time on BWI Live.
All right. So we're going to do something here that makes me completely uncomfortable. And that is to be comfortable. Like, this is weird for me. So I was raised that, like, if you're on camera, you're wearing a tie, right? You're in a suit. So Landon's had me on his YouTube channel a whole bunch of times. Absolutely. And so I wanted to return the favor, have you on, but not do it in the same way we always do, which is like, hey, here's a box and here's another box, and then we're just going to talk at each other from across State College. So I also want to do something different. Landon, you do a whole bunch of stuff that, like, just thinking outside the box, trying stuff. And so I wanted to do something different and give people a little slice of something, kind of in the day in the life. If I'm not working on football, this is where I am. So welcome to the BWI something or other. I don't know what to call this. We're just going to sit here and talk football.
On the back porch.
On the back porch.
Why not? And T. Frank you can't see all of it, but he has manufactured and done. Every time I text T. Frank, it's like he's like, yeah, I'm doing something on the house, working, putting something together, building something. So you've done a very nice job putting this all together. You got a nice place. And might I say, the State College weather for the first time in a while is actually nice. We're sitting here.
Yeah.
It's like high 70s with the breeze, maybe low 80s, and it feels good. So yeah, I'm excited. This is fun. We talked about this. I still haven't even put out the video yet that we did. We did a drive.
I was wondering. I didn't see it.
I don't know when this is coming out. It might be out. That's probably coming out within the next couple of days. So
okay.
All right. Me and T. Frank, after the video finished, we sat there and we just talked about the Penn State football roster outlook, the big games for like 30 minutes. And we're like, all right, I got to come on your channel. We just got to sit there and just.
Why don't we just do that?
Why not?
Why don't we just do that? Because it's funny. I think a lot of people think, like, when you guys aren't on camera, are you like just talking about football? Yes. Yeah. That's just like, we just sit around and talk about football. So we talk about Penn State football.
Yeah, what else is there to talk about?
Yeah. So I don't know what this is going to. I don't even know how, like, if there's one thing that I don't, like, it's indecisive. So I don't know how we're going to put this out. Right now, I'm just telling you, like, however you're viewing it, I figured it out later. I do know that 100%, like, it's going to be on the BlueWhiteIllustrated.com for people that want to watch the full thing there. I want it to be a little bit more unedited in terms of like a little bit more honest, maybe not all of the things. So here's the thing, Landon. I respect what you did. To go out there and play football is really hard on a whole bunch of different levels. So I don't want to sit here and like the unfiltered thing is then we just start talking smack on current players because that sucks. Like from a player perspective, I don't think that's fair. And then the other thing is like I just think it's rude. Like I'm so this kind of bro out session, I'm trying to figure out like what's the level of like I'm not gonna swear. Even though I'm in the place that I swear all the time.
Start cussing all over the place. No.
That's why it's uncomfortable.
I know. We'll have fun. I think, I know sometimes I like go too far into that where I really try to pretend that like I'm not on camera and it's like, oh, I may have went too far. I cursed a little too much or I tried to be too comfortable. But no, I think we'll have fun with it. And I know, I mean, how I always am generally is like, I really never try to like, beat down a player. If they're bad, you can say they're whatever. They had a rough camp. They had a rough last season. But, try not to like bag on them. But, at the same time, they, everybody wants to hear the truth of, I think, probably the two guys that watch the most tape out of anybody around.
Yeah.
Probably more than some of the guys on the team, honestly. Talking to
he said it. He said it, not me. He said it.
Just putting that out there. I'm saying, hey, it's all right. It's all right. Some guys, I'll tell you what, I probably watch more tape now. Not probably, I absolutely do.
Well, you watch more stuff, right? Like some of the times when we're watching film, like you're giving me detailed analysis on like how the offensive line is playing, but I imagine you didn't watch your defensive teammates all that much to watch film, right? Like you're watching the whole thing now.
That's a really good point. Yeah, no, it is way different because it was really, and like how Trout would always make it work was you'd have like a paper and you'd have to fill it out and we'd go through and it's their top 5 blitzes. And they would kind of tell us because you come in each week and there is those you always, a lot of people ask those like quality control people like Greg Gattuso and guys like that they don't exactly have a role. I mean, he's like on the D line, but a lot of those coaches, the GAs, they're working. Let's say it's Ohio State this weekend. We got Iowa and we got Ohio State the next week. We're prepping for Iowa. Well, there's a certain group of people that are already looking ahead to Ohio State because when we come in on Sunday morning, we already got to get slapped in front of us. Ohio State's top pressures, their top whatever. If you're a defense, their top third down plays, all of that type of stuff.
How much do you miss that? Because here's the one thing that always frustrates me is like the way we watch film now is like here's a play, here's another play. It's all chronological. It's how you would watch the game, except different camera angles.
The
cut-ups. Oh my God! If I could have cut-ups. Every third down pressure, and you could watch it and be like, "Oh my God, this makes sense." Like you see the pattern because you're presented the pattern. You don't have to go find the pattern.
It is unbelievably easy. You're right. So you go in and you're right. Let's say they run axe blitz. That's where they blitz the 2 inside linebackers. That is all in there. Every single time they've ran axe, someone already went through some poor GA.
Right.
Is doing what we do now every week. And they went through and sectioned off I can't imagine how much work that is. That's why when people ask me, they're like, would you go into coaching or like, you post a good film breakdown. It's like, you need to be a coach. And it's like, no, I won't do that because
you see this took me 2 hours and this was 4 plays.
There's nothing. And so the GA life is so bad, man. You just get yelled at and like, that's anywhere. Like that's like, that's how everybody gets their start. And it's really hard not to start out as a GA. So that was why for me, I was like, I can't do this. I enjoy too much getting to share my knowledge. I would hate to like find something and like not be able to
talk about it.
Like,
oh my God.
Yeah. So no, I actually still haven't released it. I was holding on to it. I had Trout on and I was talking to him about and he's seen some of my stuff, but I was talking about kind of what I do and I gave him the rundown. I don't think I even talked about it on camera about the SMU pregame film breakdown that I did about Savion Byrd, their left tackle, who Abdul.
Oh yeah, I remember we were talking about
we talked about it.
Yeah.
And I decided. I think you told me you're like maybe you shouldn't, and I'm like no, I'm going to put it in the pregame film breakdown about how he had a tell. It was a run pass. Of where he put his hands on his knees.
Right. I remember this.
Yeah, if he had one hand on each knee like this, like normal, then that was a run. If he had both hands on the up knee, it was a pass.
Yeah.
And I put that in my, pregame film breakdown. I had people in the comments that were like mad. They're like, you shouldn't have put this in there. And then I swear to God, first play comes out and it was a I think it was a run, and he put both hands on his up knee, and I was like, oh, no way. And I had to find out. So that's why I forget their offensive line coach, and I hit him up, and he responded, and he was like, yeah, we had a couple people put us onto that tape, and I had told him it was already an issue.
Oh, wow.
We're able to show them. Yeah. So I guess I got to be a little more careful.
So this is where, like, it's like a nature documentary. When you see the cheetah stalking the gazelle, and you're watching it at home, right? But the photographer has to decide if he's going to intervene, right? And that's how I was feeling. I'm like,
really good way
that's how I was feeling about this. I'm like, you're about to save the gazelle. You're gonna, like, that was my concern. It's like there's that kind of, like, there's the fourth wall, and it's like you have been on either side of it, so you probably don't even know it exists,
right?
And so then that's the part when it's like, when we've stumbled across things in the past, I'm like, I got to keep that to myself, but I really want to talk about it because I feel like I don't have the same sort of connections in terms of, like, being able to text somebody, but there is that kind of, like, allowing things to play out because that's the nature of how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I remember that being like, I wonder how this is going to play out.
Well, the good news is that the cheetah that was hunting the gazelle was Abdul Carter, so it didn't really...
He caught the cheetah. He caught the gazelle anyway.
The gazelle was
Yeah.
That poor left tackle. Oh, that was like one of the worst games I've ever seen. And when Abdul, he was just beating him into oblivion.
That was the game where he got held and still got a sack, right?
Literally, like,
yeah.
The refs still didn't even call it. Yeah, that was watching. I've been watching the whole defense back from last year. Abdul Carter was, I mean, I put a tweet out yesterday, like 2 days ago, about if you could bring back one player for this season. And I didn't want to do two because it's obvious if, like, someone would go. I don't know. If you had to bring back one, who would be your answer? I said either I would love to have Allen Robinson. But
any player.
Sorry, not just from last year.
Okay,
I did get misconfused about that. I think, but for me, I was like, if I'm gonna pick someone on defense, like, I truly think it might be Abdul Carter. Just bring him back from last year.
Yeah. I guess you could make an argument having a healthy PJ Mustipher might be one of those that you would say, like, just for the structure of the team, because you got two good defensive ends. James Franklin's talked about how much he likes Zariah Fisher, and we've seen good stuff from Zariah Fisher when he's been healthy. So yeah, superstar. I think you always take the superstar, but if you, like, I'm going to be a contrarian and bring up a different person, I might be a D tackle, and I don't know if that's like Windsor or Mustipher, somebody who can be an active run defender and help out that position where I'm still a little leery about what Alonzo Ford's going to be.
Yeah.
It's
curiously
a little worried about that.
He was playing really well. I mean, I was like, it felt like he was playing at a high level.
Yeah.
I still felt like there was times I was specific. I went through and watched like 5 games of just watching him. There were times where he'd get himself in a little bit of trouble. He really liked to kind of like spin out of like a block. And that would get him in some deep stuff sometimes.
I love that he's a big man who plays like a D end. I think that, like, that's the best combination because he's still big. He was still big enough to hold up against the run, but he do shit like that.
Yeah.
And that was fun and like, and effective. Like, a lot of times, like, his movement was really the thing that I thought made him effective at that size. And like, I don't think the movement's the issue. I just wonder if he's going to have that anchor this year because he's coming off a lower body injury.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's going to be big. I mean, honestly, the biggest thing for like the defensive line, like, knock on wood, there's a lot of wood here. They cannot afford an injury. Like, it's so thin after Grand, and that sucks. We had that with Adisa. I guess that was in 2021 when he hurt himself. Hurt his knee. At home training, and it sucks. Guys are just at home trying to get better during break, and it happens. But Max, he looked huge.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
He got a lot bigger.
Yeah, he looked really good. So we're gonna have to wait another year. How you feeling going to Oregon?
So, by the way, excellent job hosting the show. On my back porch. Like, it is excellent. Like, he's a natural. I'm just way too relaxed. I'm here just like hanging out on my own show. Here's the thing. Quarterbacks are so important, right? And like, I did a deep dive on Oregon, and they bought a lot of really good players in the transfer portal. Like, there's no way around it. It's a talented team. They're really good. Penn State brought all their players back. They should be expected to be the favorite at home with Drew Aller, Nick Singleton, Dennis Sutton, Zane Durant, Zakee Wheatley. Like, that's the reason they're the preseason favorite. So until I see Dante Moore throw a pass, like, yeah, I think Here's the thing. Like, I don't know when this is coming out again. I picked them to go 12-0 in the preseason magazine. Like, I picked them to go undefeated because it's an expectation that Julian Sands, a first-time starting quarterback at Ohio State. Dante Moore's a first-time starting quarterback. I get that they're 5-star quarterbacks, but Drew Aller's a senior 5-star quarterback. And I know that that's way too simple, especially for this conversation between us, who nuance and context is like the North Star. But at a certain point, that is the point where he's been around the block enough. He's seen enough of this. He's seen that defense last year. Should be able to beat it. Like, he should be able to beat it.
Weaker defense and a weaker Oregon defense too. That,
Yeah.
you know, I was talking to Nick Dawkins about this, and I had said to him, I'm like, dude, I want to be honest, going into that game, I was like, yeah, we're not going to be able to run the ball. And he was like, yo, you thought that? Because I thought the same thing.
Oh, thank God. Because we said that. We said that on the tailgate show. We were talking about that.
We were warning people. People were probably like, oh, those guys don't know what the heck they're talking about.
Derek Harmon was a first-round draft pick. Like, he's that good.
Yeah. The Steelers won him for a reason. I know that you wanted the Bills to take him. We were talking about it. I'm so happy. And he's going to start on the Steelers this year. Nick Dawkins took Derek Harmon to the woodshed.
Yeah.
I don't know how it happened, but it happened. Everybody just played such a good game. And I just feel like, I don't know. I feel like I don't see us losing to Oregon. I think we're going to be in. I also have the prediction. I think we're going to be in control of that game the whole time. I think
So it's
gonna be close.
a good win. You're saying it's a confidence win.
I don't mean we're going to win by like 17, but like I feel like we're always going to like have the momentum. So to speak. Like I don't think we'll get down by like 7 or 10 points and try to call it like how we had to in the Big Ten championship.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel too with Dante Moore. It's just I'm probably a bigger fan of his because he decided to come to Oregon and sit behind Dylan Gabriel, and I think that's actually going to probably do wonders for his game of starter out of UCLA as a freshman, and then came, learned, sat, had some patience, actually got to work on his craft, wasn't forced into playing, because that's what's happening so much now in college football and the NFL is people getting forced to play early and expectations are high and they can't meet it, and then they just end up sucking because they're a great talent but they weren't developed enough and you didn't give them.
And the mental side is the important thing, right? The confidence to go out and do what you know you can do.
So few people have that confidence. That's why like Abdul Carter was so special to me, because he came in right away and like never lost that confidence, even from day one.
I was going to say, like, I think he's impervious to losing that confidence just based on the way I've seen him operate in the world.
Yeah, he just won't do it. But like any normal human being, like you lose confidence. Like when Smith Vilbert put me on my ass day one of camp of spring ball when I got here, never had played right tackle. I get pancaked and Franklin's like, get up. And like, and I hear Smitty's like, yeah, bro, that's how we do it here. And I'm like, God, I hate my life now. That spring ball was so rough for me, T. Frank. Oh my God, dude.
What do you think about the game against Oregon from like the adjustment perspective? Because part of what Oregon did was surprise Penn State's D-line and get them early, get them on their heels. And then there was like a lot of advantage of it's the championship game. We're doing some things out of character, tackle over stuff. And the same thing for Koloniki. I feel like they changed up the run blocking. Were more aggressive with their outside zone, more lateral push. Now that's on film. Like they've done it to each other. That's I guess what I'm thinking of. Like what's the wild card from what are we cooking up this year on both sides of the ball? How do you see that factoring into like the percent we don't know going into the season?
Yeah, no, I think that's an interesting question. I come into the game and I expect, just kind of knowing how we are, we're going to want to come in and dominate them on the ground game again. It's going to be like I feel like it's going to be like a pride thing and be like, yo, and we're going to run it up the middle too, I feel like. Not even just stretch it outside. And Drew in that game, he was doing a ton. He finally kept it.
Yep.
He finally kept the ball on some reads.
And on like a read, on an inverted read where he was the A gap.
Right. Yeah. He was going up the middle. He was the ball up the middle. He did it twice. So yeah, there was like you said, those were the little things that they implemented for Oregon the first time. I don't know. I feel like we're almost going to come out and just try to like big dog Oregon and like, let's sling it around a little bit and let's just run the rock on them. Cause we talked about this. I mean, they lost Derek Harmon. They lost
Caldwell, Jamari Caldwell.
Who was the other defensive end?
Jordan Birch.
Birch is gone. Obviously, I think Uyunglele is back.
Yeah.
So I get to get another fight with his dad on Twitter. That's going to be good. That was, I think that one started because he said that his son was better than Abdul, and I laughed. And I was like,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, he was taking photos of Abdul against the left tackle and was like, this is a joke. Like, this guy's not good. And then I just kind of I was like, all right, you put the bait out there. I'm going to take it. Like, let's do this. But no, put that to the side. Yeah. I know. I truly think we're going to come.
We have a whole nother show of just your Twitter beefs. Like, that's a whole separate show.
I feel like its own segment, I guess. We're going to start that for all the big games. I'm going to try to find a beef with like the Nevada beat writer, maybe. Hold on. We'll figure that out.
That's gonna be challenging when you're going to Villanova and being like, yeah, well, our basketball team's better than Penn State's, and everyone's looking around like, yeah,
so
of course.
We don't care that much about football now. I don't know. I think that's going to be. Question is, like, how much do we show those first 3 weeks? Are we really going to keep it? Are we going to keep it spring game-esque? Those first 3 games, you know what I mean?
Kotelnicki likes to show everything.
He does. We showed a ton against West Virginia.
Yeah. And so I think the answer is yes, but the question is not like, what are they going to show? It's just, how much more is there? Because people ask me that all the time of like, what's in the playbook? And first off, I never have the playbook. I don't know. Like, I don't know.
Well,
I wish.
College football 26.
Yeah, I'm cheap. I didn't buy it.